Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. Okay guys, we are talking about the Tommyknockers, which I have a very brief history with this book because my friend rented it when we were in middle school and we watched it. I didn't like it. Jimmy Smits, I think is his name. He was in the movie. I find him creepy in some way. And later, when watching Dexter, I felt the same about him. So I don't know what it is. The premise seemed dumb to me. And I just don't like alien-themed anything. I just don't find them interesting at all. If something turns to aliens, like a lot of American Horror Story plots seem to do, I just am annoyed and I just am so bored. So bored. People like to talk about spaceships and things like that, the possibility of life on other planets and whatnot, and I just don't give a shit. That always factored in. The Tommyknockers was possibly the last Stephen King book I really read because, you know, I wanted to read all of his stuff. So I went through everything from the library when I was a kid and I eventually read it just because I had to read it. You know, like, it was something that had to be done. But I will say, I was excited to start rereading this book. And then I started rereading the book. I just don't like it. I don't like it. So this might be a quick series of videos. We'll see. We begin, and already I dislike the way that Stephen King refers to Roberta Anderson. Her name is Bobby, for all intents and purposes. But he calls her Anderson. He calls her by her last name, even though she's not referred to by last name from other characters. It just, something about it, the way he calls her Anderson, drives me crazy. So she, quote, literally stumbled over her destiny in the small town of Haven, Maine on June 21st, 1988. Page 11. Roberta is 37. She is out on her property with her dog, a beagle, Peter. Peter's old. There's a lot of reference to his age, his decline in health. His eye has a cataract. He's stiff. He doesn't move as well. He doesn't get excited as much as he used to. All the stuff that Bobby is thinking about as he is nearing the end of his life. And that is just a point that is hammered home because we know something important is coming up. So Bobby has tripped on a piece of metal and she starts digging, and it has a vibration to it when she touches it. It has a draw. She wants to dig it out, and she is starting to obsess over this thing that she found on the ground, or in the ground, I guess. So Peter doesn't like this metal object, and she is starting to be affected by it, even just having been near it one time. Her period starts early. She starts bleeding more heavily than normal. She is sleeping a lot. She is ravenous. She wants to eat a lot. And she is not getting quality sleep. She zones out, and it's like her body is being used by some other force. And she finally comes to the conclusion, once she's spent a great deal of time digging on this object, that it's a flying saucer. So she has a flying saucer on her property in the woods of Maine. It is emitting something from it that is controlling her and giving her powers, and it's also affecting things around it. There are dead animals. There aren't any flies. There aren't living animals around, no bird noises, nothing like that. Her dog is starting to age backwards a little bit. His cataract starts diminishing and shrinking in size, and at night she notices a green glow emanating from his eye. So it's like a green thing is in there working on it and healing him. He's getting younger, more spry. It's very bizarre. Quote, "It glared with the witchy green light of St. Elmo's fire drifting over a swamp after a still muggy day," page 44. So this glow is, it makes me think of the foo lights in Pet Sematary. That's what I'm picturing coming from Peter's eye. Then we get introduced to another character. Bobby has mentioned him a few times. She has been wanting to call him. He's on a book tour. He's reading his poems. He's an author. He's an alcoholic. He's a little out there. He's kind of going mad. For a long time he's been obsessed with nuclear power and the dangers of it, and he can't get over things. He has to fight about them, and he drinks a lot, so it's a bad combination. We shift over to him, and we're seeing things from his side. He's on his tour now, and he is drinking with a rich buddy whose name is Ron Cummings, and their relationship is so much like Jack Torrance and Al Shockley from The Shining. It's uncanny, but I like Jack and Al better than these two. There's a woman who has given him this job. Her name is Patricia McCardle, who is from Derry, Maine, and she has him on this tour. He feels he doesn't like her, but he takes it because he needs a job. And they go to this party afterward, a dinner party, and he insults the host and his guests because they're talking about nuclear power, and Jim starts going off about radiation and nuclear fallout, reactor explosions, etc., etc. And he starts like yelling. He gets kicked out, but he won't leave, and then he starts being abusive physically, and it's just hard to sympathize with this guy. He goes on this huge bender afterward, after he makes an ass of himself at this party, and he is basically off the tour. And he wakes up, he is almost drowned because he's on the rocks of some ocean park, and just a little bit longer and the tide would have carried him away and he would have died. And then he kind of thinks, well, I think I want to die. I don't like this. He has a sense that Bobby's in trouble. He's had this kind of telepathic warning that things are not okay and she's in trouble and she needs him, and she did try to call him, so there's that at work. He calls for her and he can't reach her, so he hitchhikes back to Haven, Maine to see if she's okay, and if she's okay he's gonna off himself, and if not then he's gonna help her. So he gets there and she is terrible looking. She just is emaciated. He compared her to Karen Carpenter near the end of Karen's life, and she collapses into his arms and he doesn't know what to do, so he's going to call 911 and get some kind of medical help for her. And she insists that he does not call anyone, and he agrees. He's like, fine, you know, I will make my decision later. And while she's sleeping, he goes around the house because she told him to look around and see what she's been up to because he's curious, and he sees all these things, these little projects that she's been working on, and she's done a lot. To be honest, I find them very boring. She has constructed a water heater, and she has modified her Tomcat vehicle thing, and I find it to be kind of a tedious and boring description of all the stuff that has gone on, all these home improvements, these little projects. And basically she's using some sort of green light energy and has been a conduit for these beings that she is starting to unearth. And being a writer herself, he finds, which I find to be the most interesting thing that happened, she has created a typewriter that works using telepathy. Like, she can use her thoughts to write her next novel. So she has written a 400-page novel in 3 weeks, and he says it's the best novel he's ever read. He's about 40 pages in when she wakes up. So we find out that Jim Gardner is afraid of the Tommyknockers. He's been nervous about it since he was a kid, and he keeps getting little references to the Tommyknockers throughout the novel that we've already seen so far. We also know that he had a steel plate put in his head due to a skiing accident when he was like 17 or something. And this steel plate is preventing Bobby from reading his thoughts entirely. She can get little bits and pieces, but she can't really read his thoughts, which is important. Peter, the dog, is dead, and Bobby has told him the story that he was just old and died, but we know that she's keeping something from him, and we don't know what yet. But the Tommyknockers, the little being things inside of the saucer, don't want him to know the details. So there's a lot of self-censoring going on, there's a lot of duplicity. Bobby is trying to get him hooked on what she's hooked on, this crazy saucer thing with its powers. And she wants to use Jim, and she's kind of using the fact that he's an alcoholic to her advantage. So she's not really a friend anymore. She is definitely using him. So Gardner comes to the decision that he is going to help her dig. So he's going to stay and he's going to help her uncover this thing. Maybe they'll be able to use what they find for the greater good, because that's how she gets him. He, wants to stick it to the man. He wants to improve things. He wants to change the world in a positive way, and he sees this as a way to do it. And Bobby knew that's what he would be like, and that's where we're leaving it today. Have a spooky day. I don't know, between Misery and the Tommyknockers, this is not my favorite time period of Stephen King works.